This is the Twin City News Around Town. A closer look at the people, places, and events around Batesburg, Leesville, Gilbert, and the Ridge. Presented by the Twin City News, Batesburg, Leesville's community journalism since 1925.
Welcome into TCN Around Town, the Twin City News podcast. I'm Tony Ballman, editor of the Twin City News. I thank you for joining us on this Saturday, the 30th day of May. And we are continuing our conversations with candidates in the June 9th primary. And we have, for the past 3 days, focused on the Republican primary for U.S. Senate. The incumbent, of course, is Lindsey Graham. But this year, Senator Graham has 3 GOP challengers, and we're joined by one of those men today, the third of the men to join us. Thank you, Mr. Buckner. I appreciate it. It is DWAYNE T. Duke Buckner. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Well, let's start.
How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm having a beautiful day in South Carolina. Is there any other day?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Question. Let me let you start off by introducing yourself to our readers and our listeners who may not know Duke Buckner.
Okay, great. My name is DWAYNE Buckner, but all my friends call me Duke. I'm from the great city of Walterboro, South Carolina, in the Low Country. Born and raised in Walterboro. Graduated from Walterboro High School in 1990. Went on to South Carolina State University. Got my degree in English education in 1994. My professional experience, I started off as a public school English teacher, middle and high school. I taught at Colleton Middle School, and then I taught 10th and 11th grade English at Walterboro High School. And then my wife and I decided that we wanted to do something together, so we decided to go into newspaper business. So in 1996, we started a weekly newspaper called the Community Times Dispatch. And Tony, let me tell you, that was a labor of love, man. We used to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, deliver the papers, and sell ads and write articles, and it was a great opportunity to meet a lot of great people, and I learned a lot in the newspaper business. However, financially, the newspaper business was challenging.
This I know. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, this I know.
And but my heart was always to go to law school, and so finally, the Lord opened an opportunity for me to get accepted to a school down in South Florida, in a little town called Davie, Florida, close to Fort Lauderdale, called Nova Southeastern University. So I sold the newspaper and moved to Florida, and graduated with my law degree from Nova Southeastern in 2006, and passed the Florida bar first time and became a public defender. So that was my first job as a public defender down in Broward County in Fort Lauderdale. And so I practiced law down there for a couple of years, and then my dad was back home, was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he asked me to come back home to South Carolina, and I made that decision to do that. So I came back in 2009, and when I came home, I decided that I saw my community and saw my neighborhood and the city, and I wanted to do something to improve it. So I ran for the Walterboro City Council, and I was elected to the Walterboro City Council. And so and while I was running for office, I was also trying to study for the South Carolina bar. And so I'll be honest, I failed the bar, but I got on the city council. And so I spent a couple of years, I was a car salesman down at Hyundai on Savannah Highway in Charleston. I sold cars. I did whatever I could until I could take the bar again. So I took it again and I passed it. And started my own firm in 2012 called BUCKNER Law Firm, and I've been in business for myself, practicing and representing the good people of South Carolina. August will be 8 years. So that's my professional background.
Well, and then, as you describe this pathway that you took, a former fellow newspaper man, so, yes. You understand the fraternity, but you're a working class individual, and sounds like you're a self-made man who, yes, created your success with the sweat of your brow and that type of thing. And you're a former Democrat, right? You migrated.
A long time ago. I mean,
you migrated.
My dad was a Democrat. He served on the county council for a long time, and I grew up in a house of Democrats. So I was taught to be a Democrat. But once I got a little older and could see things and analyze things for myself, I began to see some hypocrisy in the Democratic Party. And I'll share the story with you. When I was in the newspaper business, Governor David Beasley came to Walterboro, South Carolina for an event. We were, the Tuskegee Airmen who flew combat missions in World War II, they were, our city decided that they would have a memorial dedication to them, and they had a monument ceremony there in the old Army airfield in Walterboro where they trained before they flew combat missions. And Governor David Beasley was there, and I got an opportunity to meet Governor Beasley, and I was very impressed with Governor Beasley, and I ended up following his career. And the two things that he did that really impressed me and it opened my eyes to the Republican Party. The first thing he said, I'll never forget, I was watching ETV, and he was doing the State of the State address, and Governor Beasley said these words. He said, "We're going to end video poker in South Carolina." And when I heard him say that, Tony, it touched my heart, because I saw what those games were doing to the people of South Carolina. People putting their hard-earned money in those games, staying in the convenience store for hours. And in many instances, some mothers were leaving their children in the car in order to play those games. And so David Beasley was right on it with that. And then the second thing, which he said, which I believe he committed political suicide, but I respected him so much, he told the people of South Carolina that the Lord told him to take the Confederate flag down from the State House grounds, from the top of the State House. Let me get that correct. And when I heard him say that, I said, wow, did he just say he said the Lord told him to do it. So, if you guys want to argue with somebody, argue with the Lord. But the Lord told me to take it down. So he had the courage. And then the next election, Jim Hodges, Democrat, became the next governor of South Carolina. And I said, wow, here is Governor Beasley standing for what was right, standing for what he believed in. It cost him his political career, but he was a Republican. And I learned from that Republican stood for principle, even though it cost him his political career. And that's why it was so fitting to have Governor Beasley be at the ceremony when Governor Nikki Haley, after the tragedy there in Charleston at the Emmanuel AME Church, that Governor Beasley was there, because he was the one who, long time ago, made that point that this is something that we need to do for South Carolina. And so that began my exodus from the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm. But
that was back in the late 90s. That was around 1997, 98, somewhere.
But there is a conventional wisdom that the Democratic Party is the party for and of people of color. And it's a talking point among Democrats that the Republican Party has left Black America behind. You can speak to this you can speak to it better than anybody who is running in this particular race. Is that a fallacy, or is the GOP out of touch with Black America?
That's a lie. And Tony, let me just give you the history of the South Carolina Republican Party. The South Carolina Republican Party was organized by a former slave named Robert Smalls from Beaufort, South Carolina. Robert Smalls is known for commandeering a Confederate ship and bringing it back up across enemy lines and deliver it to the Northern Union forces. And so when he appeared before Abraham Lincoln, they asked him, well, why would you do this? Why would you risk your life? Why would you risk your family? And he said, I did it for freedom. So the Republican Party history has been for African Americans. It was the party of Lincoln, the party that was against slavery, the party that was against segregation. It was the party that promoted the ability for all people, including African Americans, to be able to be citizens of the United States. And so that is the foundation of the Republican Party. However, when you contrast that with the foundation of the Democratic Party, they were the party that was for segregation. They were the party that wanted to secede from the Union. They were the party that wanted to keep African Americans enslaved. They were the party that, and I'm going to say this, had working in step with them domestic terrorist organizations that were helping them to further their agenda. And that domestic terrorist organization is known as the Ku Klux Klan. That's the history and the foundation of the Democratic Party. And so I ask people, well, which foundation do you want to build on? You know, when you build a house, if the foundation isn't right, Tony, you know what you have to do to that house. You got to tear it all down. The foundation of the Republican Party was built on faith, love, and courage. And that's the foundation that I want to give my time, my energy, my devotion, and my vote to. And so that's why, you know, that's just one of the reasons why I moved into the Republican Party, because I saw that the Democratic Party, though they pretend like they are the party of diversity and the party of racial equality, that's not true at all. They're the party, and I'm going to say this, you know, if you define what a racist is a person, or racist is, or ist on that ending of a word means that you specialize in something. For example, a therapist is a person that specializes in therapy. A dentist is a person that specializes in dental work. So a racist is a person that specializes in racism. And if you listen, the party that's always talking about race is the Democratic Party. It is not the Republican Party. So I'm going to conclude that the Democratic Party, based on that definition, is the most racist party in the United States, based on that definition.
The flip side of that would be if you unseat Lindsey Graham in the primary on June 9th and you make it to the general election in November, the flip side of that from the Democratic opponent is going to be that we've had a racist in the White House for the past 4 years. Do you disagree with that characterization of our president, even in light of the tweets that happened overnight on Thursday night into Friday night, you know, talking specifically about the situation in Minneapolis?
Okay, first of all, I don't believe that Donald Trump is a racist. I don't believe that at all. His policies have done more for the African American community than any other president, I think, in at least in the last 8 years. His policies have done great for African Americans. We have the lowest African American employment numbers in the history of the country. He worked very diligently on criminal justice reform, which allowed for many African American men that were incarcerated and seeing very lengthy sentences for minor crimes. They could have their sentences commuted and be released. So I can't go along with the fact that people are saying that President Trump is a racist. I don't agree with that at all. As for the situation in Minnesota, you know, the greater issue in that is police, excessive force by the police. That's the issue, excessive force by the police. Or we can call it police brutality. And when you look at the situation that's going on, in many instances, that excessive force is being exhibited on African American men. When I did the research, I looked at it and started wondering, well, on the federal level, federal law enforcement agencies, you don't see excessive use of force on African Americans. You don't see it, or if it is, you don't hear about it. It is only on the local, county, and state level where you see this excessive force being exhibited. So it begs the question that maybe it's an issue of training, that there's some type of training and de-escalation that is happening on the federal level with federal law enforcement agents that's not happening on the state and local level.
But as a
So
U.S.
I think,
Go ahead, sir.
sorry.
Please, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir. Finish your point.
So I was just making the point that I think one of the issues in dealing with this problem of excessive force by the police is training, and especially training in de-escalation.
As a U.S. senator, now that you characterize it as a local problem at the local police level, as a U.S. senator, what do you feel like that you can do to make sure that local law enforcement does what it's supposed to do, does not unfairly target people of color or minorities, LGBTQ, that sort of thing, and that they have the training in de-escalation? What can you do at the federal level as the new U.S. Senator to forward that at the local level?
Well, one of the things I served on the Walterboro City Council, and one of the issues, we had a big crime problem in Walterboro a few years back. And we hired a professional consultant to come in and help us. And this is what we came to the conclusion, that we needed more what they call community policing, meaning police officers need to be in the community, live in the community that they serve. Because if you're living 30 or 40 miles away, you don't really have that relationship with the people. You don't really know them. And so in instances where federal dollars can go towards more community policing, federal dollars can go towards more training, I would be in favor of that 100%. And that's what I believe we can do on the federal level, is to make sure that local, starting with city, town, and state and county law enforcement are getting that training that I believe that they need, more additional training in de-escalation, which will help them to be a better officer on the street and encourage community policing, which now you know these people, you know the person, and you're better able to help and serve the community that you live in because you know the people.
How concerned are you that situations like what's happening in Minnesota and the COVID-19 are being appropriated by both parties for political purposes? I mean, these are both human tragedies, but it seems like that political parties and people in power in political parties, it seems like that they are appropriating these human tragedies for political gain. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I think the greater issue, Tony, is our humanity. You know, you've got policy and then you got humanity. And I think right now our humanity is at issue. How we treat one another, how we talk to each other, how we have respect for each other. I was taught to treat people the way I want to be treated. That's something that I grew up and I believe that. And so I'll share this with you. You know, I believe that all people are made in the image of God. And therefore, when you say a person is stupid, you say a person is dumb, or a person is a thug or something, I can't go along with that because that's against my belief that we're all made in the image of God. And so you can't curse the image of God out of one mouth and bless God out of the same mouth. You know, the good book is clear. Blessings and cursing can't come out of the same mouth. So the way to handle that, if you want to say that something somebody did was dumb or something somebody said was stupid, or a person is exhibiting thuggish behavior, then I can go along with that. But saying you are dumb, you are stupid, you are this, I can't. My Christian values won't allow me to go along with that. And to that extent,
you would then say to the president, clean up your language on the tweet that he issued Thursday night, where he called the people who were rioting in Minneapolis thugs.
I would say this: that's not how I would handle it. You know, that's not what I would say. You know, everybody is different. You know, everybody says things the way they want to say it. However, that's not how I would say it. And if there's on policy, you know, I'm 100% behind the president, but calling people names and thugs and putting people down and saying people are dumb or stupid or whatever, you know, that's not how I would handle it. and I would encourage the president not to do that. But he's his own man. You know, he says what he wants to say. I just don't think that's not how Senator Duke Buckner would handle the situation. I wouldn't call people names and things like that.
Well, let me give you the opportunity now, take the next 4 or 5 minutes or so, to explain to our listeners and our readers what would be the three legs, what do you consider the three pillars upon which your campaign to unseat Lindsey Graham would be built?
Well, Tony, I released my contract with South Carolina, which is on my website at BUCKNERforSenate.com. And it lays out exactly what I am going to do if elected as the next U.S. Senator from South Carolina. And I drafted that contract with South Carolina in the spirit of the contract with America that was drafted by House Speaker Newt Gingrich and Dick Armey that led to the Republican Revolution back in 1994, where the Republican Party took over the House and the Senate. And so the first part of that, my contract with South Carolina, is my Right to Life Act. And I want everyone in South Carolina to know in 2018, which is the most current numbers I could get, there were 10,732 abortions performed in the state of South Carolina. And that's according to South Carolina DHEC. And I believe that life begins at conception. So therefore, in order to reduce the amount of abortions, which I believe is the killing of innocent children, I believe that we need to reduce abortions by prohibiting them with no exception.
Absolutely, absolutely no exceptions.
No exceptions.
No
abortion, no exceptions. That's my position. That's my position on that, because right now we
rape,
have
incest,
abortion.
rape, incest, life of the mother, no, just across the board, no abortions.
Right now, Tony, the position that is currently law is abortion on demand, and even in some cases they're advocating for late-term abortion, which is, to me, infanticide. And so that's the far extreme of the left. And so therefore, in order to, like my mom would say when we went fishing, to jerk the slack out the line, I've got, my position is no abortion, no exception. So we've got to pull the country back over to the middle. And the middle would be, as you suggested, abortion, no abortion, however, exception for rape or incest or life of the mother. That's more in the middle. And if such a bill were to come, I'd vote for that.
Your next plank.
Right now, but if you ask me what my position is no abortion, no exception.
Yes, sir.
And then my second issue is my Second Amendment Preservation Act. I believe, and I'll say this again, had the colonists not had muskets when the British came to squelch the rebellion, you and I, Tony, would be British colonists today, or we would still be under the British crown. And so the forefathers' Constitution said that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. And then our Supreme Court went on to say that that right is an individual one, that you do not have to be associated with a militia in order to be able to exercise that right. So you have the right to protect your family, your person, your property with a handgun. And so that right has been slowly being chipped away by those in the far left of the Democratic Party who want to infringe upon that right. And that's one of the issues I have with Senator Graham. He's in favor of red flag law. And I keep saying it, and I'll say it again. As a practicing attorney in South Carolina, being before judges and knowing how judges rule, you could be Mr. Rogers, law-abiding gun owner, and you come before a judge in a red flag hearing, your gun is going to be confiscated. You will not walk out of that courtroom and be able to exercise your Second Amendment right. It's going to be taken away. And so there's great opportunity for abuse in the red flag law. So I can't go along with that. And so I'm going to be advocating for Second Amendment to be preserved and no further infringements upon our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms.
But you also have said one strike, you're out when it comes to gun ownership.
Right, that's regarding
Criminal activity.
individuals. Hold on, let me make a point on that. That's regarding individuals who commit a crime brandishing or utilizing a firearm. And that's a difference. If you go in a convenience store and you brandish a gun or you use the gun in a felony or robbery or in any situation like that, you forfeit your you forfeit your Second Amendment right because of the nature of the weapon and the seriousness of the weapon. One strike, you're out. You know, you go in the store with and want to rob with a gun, you don't have any Second Amendment rights anymore after that. That's my position. And then my last issue, or the next issue, is my 2030 Debt-Free Act. Right now, the United States is $19 trillion in debt count. And I believe that the borrower is servant to the lender. So we have to reduce our national debt so that we can be able to invest and do the things that we need to do as a country. And the way to do that, I believe we can do it in 10 years. The reason I say that is because personally, when I graduated from law school, I had $150,000 in debt. I had a mortgage, medical bills, car notes. I was like $250,000 in debt. But today I'm totally debt free. I owe no man nothing but love. And the way to do that is discipline. And so first, our country has to do several things. One, we have to cut unnecessary spending. We have to give the president a line item veto so that he can veto these spending bills that come before him, which have all these additional pork and extra spending measures that are not in compliance with the American people. We need to make sure that we reduce or cut off all unnecessary foreign aid. And we need to make sure that businesses that are underreporting wages, that they are strictly enforced, because unfortunately we have individuals or businesses that are underreporting wages, and so we're not getting the tax revenue for that, and that's got to change. And then so we have to make sure that any unnecessary surplus property of the United States that we don't need, we need to auction it off and sell it, and then take all of that money every year, if any, and put it towards the national debt. And I believe in 10 years, we can be debt free. And the last president that was debt free for the United States was President Andrew Jackson. And that was back in the 1800s when he did that. And so I believe we can do it again. That's
been quite a while ago. Our country did just spend $4 trillion to address the economic impact of, trillions of dollars. I'm not sure what the exact figure is, but I think it's more than $4 trillion. But our country did spend trillions of dollars to handle the economic impact of the pandemic. And your opponent on June 9th was very critical of the $600 a week unemployment payment for folks who lost their job during the pandemic. What would have been your response to that? And you know, if God forbid we should have a resurgence of this, how do you see that the way the country handled the COVID-19? How would you have handled it differently from an economic standpoint?
Well, first of all, I think at this point the American people need to get back to work. And so I would not be in favor of any additional spending bill. I think the Democrats are proposing another $4 trillion in spending. I can't go along with that. We're already $19 trillion. Then when you add in the last stimulus package or the last recovery package that we just passed, we're now at $23 trillion. And we can't sustain that kind of spending. You know, we've got to hold the line on it. So I wouldn't be in favor of any additional spending for recovery efforts. We need to open up the country and we need to get back to work. As for my opponent, Senator Graham, he made some statements regarding unemployment benefits. He made the statement that well-trained nurses would rather stay at home than work. And I disagree with that 100%. I thought that was a not fair statement to our nurses who take a Nightingale oath to be committed to the care of their patients. And so I don't think they're going to stay home in order to draw a few extra dollars in unemployment benefits. And we can see that now. They're on the front line. They're out there risking their life every day in order to take care of sick people. And so I just thought that was that comment and raising that issue was a little, I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me, and I don't think it sat well with a lot of people, because I think at that time, you know, the country was shut down and folks are out there doing what they can do, and I don't think they're going to not do their duty in order to pick up a few extra dollars in unemployment.
We've got to wrap things up here just a bit. I want to give you the last couple of minutes just to summarize and tell folks who are listening, watching, why they should vote for Dwayne T. Duke Buckner for U.S. Senate on June 9th.
Well, thank you. First of all, I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And the issue in this election is whether or not your values and beliefs are being represented in Washington, D.C. And if the answer to that question is no, then it is time to vote for new leadership. I believe Senator Graham no longer represents the values and beliefs of the majority of the citizens of South Carolina. He threatened the president with impeachment, or he said he was going to have holy hell to pay if he fired Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and it would be the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency if he fired Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Senator Graham has went on to support positions that are directly in contradiction to the platform and the beliefs of the Republican Party. He supported red flag laws, expansion of red flag laws. He supports amnesty for illegal aliens. He supported cap and trade, which would drive up energy costs and have our light bill skyrocket where people can't even pay. He supported President Barack Obama's two Supreme Court picks, Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Kagan. And he has been censored by the Chesterfield County GOP, the Lexington County GOP, the Anderson County GOP, the Charleston County GOP, all because he is taking positions in contrary to the values and beliefs of the Republican Party. And I'm saying that I am going to vote in a manner that will be consistent with the values and beliefs of the Republican Party. I'm not going to compromise those values and beliefs in order to be relevant or in order to compromise, because I think that's one of the issues that we're having. We're compromising on our values and beliefs, and that's swinging the country further and further to the left. And in closing, I just want to say this. I was born in South Carolina. This is my home. I have worked here as a public school teacher, as a newspaper man, and as an attorney representing the people of South Carolina for the last 8 years. So this is my home, and I know what it means to be able to go out in a field and cut a piece of sugar cane and chop it up and suck on it until it dissolves in your mouth, or to go down to Dorchester County with a can of worms and a fishing pole and go up under a bridge and catch redbreast and brim, or to go up to York County and pick apples in one of the apple orchards up there, or to drive up to Caesar Head State Park up in the upstate and look over the mountains and see this beautiful land called South Carolina. And outside of Senator Graham, who's from South Carolina, I'm the only other candidate that's from South Carolina and understand what it means, I believe, to be South Carolinian and having had that experience. And so I'm saying I'm the best candidate who can represent the values and beliefs of the conservative values and beliefs of the citizens of South Carolina. And I'm asking for their vote and support on June the 9th.
The way that you talk through that, it at least sounds like we're going to eat good if Duke Buckner is elected to Senate.
well, I tell you what, Tony, let me share this with you. Not only are we going to eat good, but this is an issue I want to raise that is something that is critically going on in South Carolina right now. And that's the issue of fatherhood rights, which is a part of my contract with South Carolina. But right now in the state of South Carolina, any child born out of wedlock, the father has no rights to that child at all. And under my Fatherhood Preservation Act, it says that if you are a father and you're obeying the law and you're court ordered to pay child support, immediately you will receive joint custody and standard visitation rights, because the research has shown that fathers who are positively involved in the life of their children help their children to grow into mature and become productive citizens. And so I'm going to go to, you vote for Duke. Duke is going to go up there and fight for fatherhood rights so that fathers can be involved in the life of their children, have the legal right to do that. And I just wanted to share that with your listeners.
I really appreciate it. Dwayne T. Duke Buckner, Republican candidate for the United States Senate, one of 4 names on the ballot on Tuesday, June 9th, along with the incumbent Senator Lindsey Graham. But as you made the point of saying, you are one of only 2 native South Carolinians among that field of 4. So
yes.
I really appreciate your taking the time to be with me today, and I wish you all the best. I know that it's so difficult to run a campaign in the midst of a global pandemic, and also against a deeply entrenched candidate. But I do wish you the best over the next 8 to 10 days to get your points heard.
Tony, thank you very much. I really appreciate the time to be here. And again, I love our state, and I want to continue to see it grow and prosper. And in order to do that, we've got to stick to our values and beliefs. And I just want to say to your listeners, we do not have to compromise our values and beliefs in order to be prosperous. I believe if we do it the way the Lord says to do it, He will bless us and He will keep us, and our state will continue to be, in our country, that shining city on a hill which cannot be hidden.
Dwayne T. Duke Buckner, running for U.S. Senate in the June 9th primary. That's got to do it for this edition of TCN Around Town, the Twin City News podcast. I thank you so much for taking time to listen, and I invite you to continue to follow our election coverage as we go through the next 8 to 10 days or so. That's got to do it for me, and as I always say, take care of yourself, take care of other people, lift each other up, and above all else, love somebody today. I'll talk to you tomorrow.